And we want to talk today about something that all of us deal with, and that is conflict. We all have conflict in our homes. Every family, whether they look like it or not, fight sometimes. Now, I bet that as a youth, or maybe still, or at some point in your life, you've either played a sport or watched a sport. And one of the things that is really abundantly clear in sports is that there's a referee and there are boundaries. So one of the first things to do when you start to deal with conflict in your family is to find a neutral time and a neutral place. And a neutral time could be a time when everybody's not tired or hungry, just any old time. A neutral place, don't do this in the kitchen. I find that sometimes we have a lot of our arguments in the kitchen or whatever your trigger is. Don't talk about conflict in that area. Find a neutral area to talk about the conflict in your home. Now, one of the most important things to do is to be sure in yourself and between you and your spouse what the boundaries are going to be in your family. Sitting down and having that discussion over a cup of coffee in the morning, talking about what in our home, what do we want the boundaries to be for us and for our kids. Now, drawing those boundaries, when you sit down, you have that talk with your kids. It's important, let me say again, it's really important that you have those kids be a part of that process of setting the boundaries in your family. When you sit down with them, listen to them, ask them what rules they feel are fair, ask them to make suggestions, and trust me, it might be very humbling because they might say something that is similar to, well, I think we should make a rule that you shouldn't yell at me anymore. Don't feel you're alone, mom and dad. We've all had times in our life when we have yelled. I remember one specific occasion, my son was probably about 14 and I'd asked him to help make supper and I'd say, can you just cut the onion? And he's like, oh, what do I do with the onion? And I'm like, well, you cut it. And it was the silliest, tiniest thing that exploded into him and I yelling at each other and him ending up with tears coming down his cheeks going, what's a 14-year-old boy supposed to do with an onion? So silly. We can go to a place of yelling and conflict so simply and so it comes at such strange times. But sitting down with your child and setting what those boundaries will be and giving your child authority, a little bit of authority, to call penalty based on the rules that you set. So that it would be okay if you and your child were in a heated argument and your child would have the authority to say, I thought we weren't going to do this. At the same time, very respectfully saying this to you, but you, when you talk to them, also being very respectful and saying to them when they start yelling or getting into an argumentative space, I thought we weren't going to do this. What was the plan? What were we going to do differently? I know, parents, that it is really hard to take your emotion out of arguments, but trust me, from my own personal experience, when you're able to take your emotions out of the equation for those few minutes that you need to deal with a conflict with your child, you will get so much farther ahead. Remember, make some time in a neutral place and a neutral time. Ask your child for input and give them a little bit of authority to be able to call you on it when you are not keeping the rules, and also respectfully to call them on it when they are not keeping the rules. Now, sometimes you're going to need a referee. A referee is somebody that if nobody is keeping the rules and things are really going sideways, that you need some extra help. Now, for some people, that's a marriage counselor. Some people, that's a family counselor. Sometimes it's just talking to someone who is a few steps ahead of you in the parenting game, or talking to someone like a family pastor. Remember that there are people in your life, whether they be counselors, pastors, or older friends, who have experienced what you are going through, and they are more than willing to talk with you and to help you to gain even more tools than I have talked about here, and helping your family deal with conflict in healthy ways that are edifying and respectful for everyone in the home. I pray that you have a wonderful week this week.